Okay, so here's the thing. I'm gonna share this little thing that's happened to me. Okay, and this happened to me about I would say I would say this happened to me around March, the middle of March, um, about 3 years ago. Okay, now this had happened to me. Okay, I was out doing something I shouldn't have been doing. I was out getting in trouble, and I had driven somebody to Columbus, Ohio, and I had gotten stuck in an ice storm. This really bad ice storm, and I was driving on my way, what I thought was going down Route 70 to back towards PA, back towards PA, and I had gotten stuck in this ice storm. I mean, this ice storm was so bad. It was so bad, and I couldn't even see 2 feet in front of me. Well, meanwhile, I was I happened to be driving the opposite direction. I was going towards the middle of Ohio. Okay, and this happened about, I don't know, the middle of March, maybe 3/16/18, something like that, and maybe before or shortly after. I really can't remember the exact date. Okay, so I was driving actually towards the middle of Ohio, thinking I was going back towards where I'm from. And what happened was I actually fishtailed my car out trying to take an exit to actually get off of the road because it was so bad. It was so bad that I could not even see in front of me. And I had fishtailed my car out and I slipped. Okay. And what happened was, I mean, the police, they came and they wanted to tow my car out. And I mean, this police officer, he wouldn't let me call AAA, nothing. I mean, this was such an emergency. Like, these roads were so bad. He's like, you got to get your car off of this, this exit. I mean, my car was barely sticking out upon this exit, right? And I said, well, hold on, let me call AAA. You know what I mean? And he's like, no, we got to get it off now. I said, well, I don't have money for a tow truck to get it off. You know what I mean? And he's like, well, that's too bad. I'll drive you, to somewhere where you could. First off, he was saying, you know, you're in, you're by Newark, Ohio. You're by Zanesville, Ohio. And I'm like, what? So I was actually going the complete opposite direction, back to where I was supposed to be going, down Route 70, back east towards where I'm from. But I'd been going towards the middle of Ohio. So I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So this guy, I told the guy, I said, I don't have money for a tow truck for you to, tow my car out. Well, he said, you got to get it off the road. We'll hook it up. The guy didn't give me a chance at all to figure out AAA or nothing. So, anyways, he dropped me off at this Greyhound station, to where I could at least, he's like, there's a McDonald's open. You could wait there, drink a coffee, get warm, and figure out your plans on how to get this car out, and then get back on the road again. And I said, you don't understand. I don't have money to get back on the road again. To tow this car out to get this car out of the towing place. So he just reluctantly would not listen to me, and he drops me off at this Greyhound station. Anyways, needless to say, this McDonald's is closed. It's not open. And I'm in the middle of this town I've never been in Zanesville, Ohio. Okay. Well, this storm was so bad, okay, that the whole town, was shut down. This Greyhound station was shut down for 3 days straight. I mean, the whole town was a ghost town. It was just completely shut down. I had never been in this area. I never knew about this area. Never. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out my way out. So, um, I was stuck. I was literally stuck. It was hundreds of dollars to get my car out. I didn't have the money for it. I had nobody that would help me. You know what I mean? Um, so short to make a short story of this, I roamed around this town for 3 days straight, trying to find shelter. I mean, even the homeless shelters, the Salvation Army, every church you could think of, it was shut down. They were to capacity. And I said, what is, then I'm walking like, because Zanesville is right next to Newark, like, it's like right across a bridge to where you could walk to. So, all kind of strange things were happening to me. All kind of strange things. Well, I would hang out in this library in the daytime, and until it was time for the library to close, I had to literally walk around outside. This was like 10-degree weather. 10-degree weather. For 3 days straight, I did this because there was literally no Greyhound station open, no homeless, no like heating place open, like where you could actually stay the night. I mean, no kidding. And the crazy thing is, something weird happened to me, right? I'm gonna try to remember this story completely, the way this story happened. So I was sleep deprived for 3 days. I was out in the ice storm for 3 days straight. Okay, at night. And so needless to say, I don't remember this at all, but um, strange things happened to me. So I can remember vague things, but um, I ended up in some kind of airport of some sort. I don't know. It was some kind of little rinky, because all I do was walk around, try to stay warm at night, and I can remember vague things like strange things in the sky were happening. Okay, like I would see what I thought I would see, like, man, it was just, it's very hard to explain. But anyways, when I was, my phone, something happened to me on my phone where everything on my phone I can remember seeing went into this alien virus, and everything shut down. And this piece of ice, it's like it uploaded my consciousness. Okay? And it was a dual consciousness. It was male and female. It was male and female. And it had to do with Antarctica. It was like my home screen. It was like my home screen. And every single thing on my phone locked up and went into some kind of sync mode. in alien virus mode where I copied every single thing on my phone and I could not unlock this and stop this. Okay? And as weird as that is, it like copied itself to me. And that was one of the last things that I could remember. Um, Needless to say, um, I got found in some parking lot by these two paramedics, or a police officer and paramedics came and picked me up, and they found me in some parking lot, basically frostbitten, like almost dead, and they rushed me to this Genesis hospital. The They almost had to amputate my legs. Okay, this was so bad. And yeah, they found me in some kind of parking lot of some kind of Mexican restaurant or something. I don't remember how I got there. Um, I lost my phone. I lost everything. I didn't have anything, and I didn't remember anything. I just remember being in this ambulance, going to this Genesis hospital, and I remember the guy looking up at the other guy, and they were checking my heartbeat, and they were looking at my legs because they thought they were gonna have to amputate my legs. They were so frostbitten. And the guy looked up at the other guy and he shook his head like he's not gonna make it. You know what I mean? He's not gonna make it. So I can remember vaguely they took me to this Genesis hospital. They had to dip like my feet in this like water, hot water, and like soak them in there, and I had to go to this NIC unit, this burn unit, to kind of like aid my frost, my legs, and my parts of my body that had been frostbitten. And it's weird that I'm remembering this story right around this time because God works in mysterious ways. He kind of led me back to this thing right around this time. Um, yeah, so this had happened, and then I eventually I eventually came to and stuff, I guess, in this hospital, and then I had to go to this. They transferred me to another hospital, and needless to say, I made it out alive. But these strange things were happening to me. It was like I remember at one point the sky and these clouds came down so close to me, and it's like a cage locked over me, and that was one of the last things I remember. And this young boy ended up later texting somebody on my phone to somebody, and the person she said, "Who's this young boy? That found your phone." Needless to say, I never got my phone back, but the young boy was texting a girl I know. So I don't know how old the boy was. He might have been 12 years old, 13 years old, something like that. And just wild, strange things. And I can remember like vaguely now that it's coming back to me, like these black statues in this town, in this town. These just weird black statues of people. I can't remember what exactly they looked like. And one of the nights that I was out, okay, wandering this town, a lady picked me up. A lady picked me up when I was by the Greyhound station. I don't know if this lady was an angel. I don't know what she picked me up and she's like, "Come on, get in." And I said, "Okay." I got in the car. She just drove me around for about 10 minutes. She didn't have any gas. She said, I've been seeing you out here for, so long. I want to get you warm for a minute." So I drove around in her car. We did this and that We drove around for a couple minutes and she got me warm. But yeah, so I eventually got found though in this parking lot. I can't remember anything else after it. And but strange things were happening to me in this town. And little did I know the history of this town. Little did I know the history of this town. Um, I just remember weird things like this crescent moon, street signs, and it was just so weird. And God somehow led me to this back to this town. This was probably about three years later now. So um, I don't know what else. Did I die there? I very well could have. I want to know the difference if I did or I didn't. Um, but I remember vague things, you know. So I don't know why I was led back in this. Now, this has a close relation to me for personal reasons. Um, where it says in Jude that Michael, you know, disputed over the body of Moses and told the devil, "May the Lord rebuke you, Satan, over the body of Moses." It's a very interesting, one of the most interesting verses in the Bible. Because why did he dispute over this body of Moses? Why did he dispute over this body of Moses? Why did Moses die? But his eye was not dim. And what does it have to do about the bones of Joseph, Amenhotep? Why were Joseph's bones so important? And lately I've been drawn back to, you know, this thing slowly but surely. And when I was led here, I absolutely was floored by this. Um, just the dates on this whole thing is just it's just boggling my mind. It's boggling my mind, and I decided to share it with you guys because the Lord put it on my heart to. Now, this goes back to Egypt. This all goes back to Egypt. Now, what I think and what I know, my heritage, somehow my heritage is related to Native Americans. I know it is. Whether or not I wasn't born, Native American, but somehow I feel closely related to them in strange ways. In strange ways. Like I was reborn to them. And I'm somehow connected to them. Now this is absolutely amazing to me. So I'm gonna share this with you guys, and we'll just go from here. Now this is the most rarest thing I've never heard people talk about before. Are these holy stones, this Decalogue stone, these keystones? As you're gonna hear this guy, and these dates are so important. As you're gonna hear this guy talk about, this man who was an archaeologist, these stones, I could tell you for 100,000,000% fact that they're real, they're authentic, And that book that I showed in the beginning talks about something going back to World War II in Egypt. World War II in Egypt, and Musa and Moses. And it has to do with something that's going on right now in our world. So Moses, he was drawn out of the water. That was his name. That's what it symbolizes. Water to draw out, to deliver. And I always wondered why, when Michael fought the devil and his angels, and neither was a found place for them in heaven anymore. Whatever happened? What happened here? What happened here? Well, I was always drawn towards the thing was that when Michael and his angels fought against the devil and his angels, neither was found a place in them anymore. Well, where did he go? Where did he go? Did light win? Did light win? Did light win? And this man, you're gonna see this Decalogue stone right here, okay? This Decalogue stone. You're gonna hear about alabaster. Alabaster was an anointment that the woman washed her hair, Jesus' feet with her hair. As Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so the Son of Man must be lifted up. Even so the Son of Man must be lifted up. Now see the difference. So in these times, back in the times of the Exodus, nothing good came out of, when in Acts 7:17, when Moses, is trying to reconcile, his brothers, because he had an Egyptian heritage and a Hebrew heritage. The guy said, "Who made you a leader? You know, who made you a leader?" Moses tried to be a peacemaker. He tried to be a peacemaker. But anyways, this guy is going to talk about alabaster. He's going to talk about when you see this little stone, this tiny little stone, this keystone, this keystone, this keystone. I find it odd also that this is called that this city is called Newark. Newark. New Ark. What was the ark? Was the ark the keystone? And this little Decalogue stone, this little Decalogue stone, this little Decalogue stone, it's tiny, but it resembles a mummy. When you're gonna see this thing, it resembles a mummy. And as tiny as it is, if you see these little Egyptian artifacts, as tiny as it is, you see these little tiny Egyptian artifacts, like the Khufu stone. They're tiny. Well, I had a vision one time that I seen the most tiny little stones, which you would think, okay, what you would look at, like say on your screen, would be the size of I don't know, like this. If you were looking at, say, like a Cheerio on your screen, just one little Cheerio, one little Cheerio, one little little pebble, like a pebble, but it was pyramid shaped. And that one little pebble, or those three pebbles, I've seen three of them. They were literally, they were literally almost unseen. You could almost invisible. And these stones, for as small as they were, all of a sudden I was drawn into them. And it was like the most tiny little thing, the tiny little stones. But it took me, it shot me, like it drew me back to these pyramids. So it was like the tiniest little pebble and dot on your screen, but it sucked me in and took me, drew me in to Egypt. Now you look at how big I don't know how big the pyramids are. What are they're like 400 some feet high. I don't know. I don't know the exact measurements. But they're absolutely this is absolutely unbelievable because I've watched Simcoe. What's that guy's name? Uh, the naked archaeologist. You know, he talks about these lost 12 tribes. These lost 12 tribes. They're scattered all around the world. We were scattered, like James says, to the scattered 12 tribes. You know, I remember watching an old episode of The Naked Archaeologist, and he says, like, in these times, in the end times, you're gonna see all these 12 tribes like migrate and flock back to Israel, to Jerusalem, back to Israel, to Jerusalem. So it's not only my opinion, but it's the opinion of many others, and not many people. I believe this information has been tucked and hidden away. And it's very well. It's not coincidental. It's all God's plan. So these things are coming up to the light right now. They're coming up to the light right now, and in these end times, people are starting to remember who they are, where they come from, and I talked about the significance of how America, Jerusalem, Lim, is a mirror. It's a twin. It's a twin. It's a twin to Israel. It's a twin. And how the great big whale, the USA, it mimics the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant. So you have, the actual USA, four directions, four winds. Um, in the tabernacle, the brazen altar, you got the golden altar, you got the ark, you have the door, you have the showbread, the water. And it's very weird that this guy talks about water, because the door would represent the East Coast. And where the water would be is right where Newark is. Where the water would be is right there where Newark is. And this guy's going to talk about, how he wanted to see if there was water. They dug down to see if they wanted to see if there was water. So you have, the ox, you have the lion, you have the man, you have the eagle. Also, this is just very interesting. Both came out of Egyptian bondage. Both crossed the sea to the promised land. Both had to take land. It's just very interesting to me. I could keep going. I could keep going, but so I'm gonna let this guy talk. I don't know if anybody else has ever heard of this, but this is this might be something new for you. So I hope you guys enjoy it. And this is very suppressed things, I believe. So enjoy it.
In Newark, Ohio, in 1860, County Surveyor David Wyrick, an amateur archaeologist, unearthed two artifacts that rank among the strangest ever found in the United States. Finely made stone tablets carrying religious inscriptions in Hebrew. Who made the tablets? Are they hoaxes or genuine religious relics? Stay tuned as we explore the mystery of the Newark Holy Stones. This is the Johnson Humrick House Museum, just east of Newark in Coshocton, Ohio. It is home to two of the most controversial artifacts ever discovered in American history, the Newark Holy Stones. More than 130 years after their discovery, these mysterious artifacts continue to puzzle scientists and historians. Newark, Ohio is home to some of the largest and most complex earthworks found anywhere in the world. Constructed from the earth, the mounds take on different shapes and sizes. But the identity of the mound builders, the purpose of the monuments they left behind, remains a mystery to this day. Much of the controversy surrounding the Newark Holy Stones revolves around their discoverer, David Wyrick. Wyrick was the local surveyor who had a passion for archaeology. Like many others of the era, he had a theory regarding the identity of the people who built these great monuments. A common opinion in Wyrick's time was that the mounds were constructed by the lost tribes of Israel, or other Hebrew groups. The Indians who lived near or around the mound groups had no history regarding their purpose nor knowledge of the mound's use. Wyrick and the others had good reason to believe that the mounds had been constructed by Hebrews. The Quaker William Penn remarked that when he was among the Indians, he could easily imagine himself in the Jewish quarter of London. So great were the resemblances of features and gestures between the Indians and the Jews. Caleb Atwater, one of the early figures in American archaeology, cites the Bible, 2 Kings, that the Israelites built them in high places, mounds, in all of their cities. Atwater further states that the Israelites conducted great national affairs.
You see that right there? That's the exact pyramid. Well, it's like a step pyramid that Joseph made. And I find it very, very odd that this pyramid is 55 feet high. Joseph, he died, I believe, 110 years old. Joshua died at 110 years old. You know, but there's something very significant about these bones in the high places, because the book I showed you was written by Mr. Highland. So, once again, like I was telling you about how small those stones look to me on what you would consider a pebble. That's why, you know, life is bigger than what we could ever imagine, bigger than we could ever see. But it's a thin line between, you know, what we see and what we can't see. Anyway.
On these mounds. Here, they crowned kings, concluded peace, and declared war. They assembled to worship, and they buried their illustrious dead. But perhaps the most interesting observation that Atwater made was the following. He wrote, the Hebrews would gather at Gilgal. The name Gilgal signifies heap. Here was a pile of stones brought up from the river Jordan and piled up when they...
Now, I talked before. Did you just hear that? Those stones came from the river. I talked before about the 12 stones that I found. The 12 stones that I found. Just sitting in somebody's driveway. Just 12 stones just sitting in somebody's driveway. You know, and of course it talks about it a lot in the Bible. And they said, remember these stones and teach your sons and daughters what these stones mean, what they symbolize. You know, when you pass over, when you go over, when you go to the promised land. Remember these stones, what they symbolize. Leave them there as a reminder. You know? So anyways, go ahead.
Camped for the first night on their journey to the promised land. Let the reader examine similar piles of stone on the waters of the Licking near Newark, Ohio.
I want to also share whenever I was found in this, whenever I was found by these police officers and paramedics, this town, Newark, in Zanesville, runs. There's this river that runs right along the town. You know, so I do remember this river.
Who were the mound builders? Everybody had an opinion, and David's opinion agreed with a lot of other people, although it was ridiculed. That is, that they were at least descendants of the lost tribes of Israel. Because after all, the Indians were savages, and they could not have built geometric works such as these. So when David discovered stones with Hebrew on them, then the trouble began.
Did you just hear that? Then the trouble began. What I know and what I could tell you about this world that we live in, the truth, you will have a very hard time really getting the truth out there to people. See, they have suppressed us so bad and have lied to us so bad. And those who are in charge, and those who think they're in power, they have hidden the truth from us for so long. And they will not allow the truth to get out. So it's very hard to convey the truth and get the truth spread out. As this man will tell you, what this poor man, David, dealt with.
To do a chronology on the events relative to the discovery of the Holy Stones of Newark, you need to start with the fact that David Warwick was an amateur archaeologist. He had apparently retired somewhere in 1858, 1859, and this puts us into June of 1860 when he and his son were digging in McCrory's Woods, which is near the Octagon Mound in Newark, Ohio. It was there that they found, buried in a pit there, what has come to be called, because a newspaper reporter said it was that, a holy stone. It had characters on it. It was identified and looked at by a number of people in Newark, including the mayor of the town, who was really quite a scientist. Charles Whittlesey, the founder of the Western Reserve Historical Society and Ohio's foremost archaeologist at the time, and the local Episcopal clergyman, who rather quickly translated it. It caused all kinds of excitement. In fact, the story is they formed a committee, and everybody went out and started digging, hunting for some more of them, and probably destroyed more archaeological stuff as a result of finding this than anything else that went on.
And there was much excitement because there was much interest in determining the history of the people that built these mounds and earthworks. And so far as anyone knew prior to that, they had no history. Nothing was written down. There were no languages. This was an interesting find because it had a written language inscribed into it, and it was Hebrew. And many...
Now, before I go on, I want to tell you there's a lot of interesting, interesting. Now I'll leave the link for you guys. There's a guy named Stan Tennant, okay, who talks about the Hebrew alphabet and how the very, very most significant thing about the Hebrew alphabet is it is the key to the universe. And he'll show you this capstone where the Hebrew letters, they work in some kind of harmonic form. These 22 letters, and they actually resemble, it's a hypersphere, and then like it's like a toroidal hypersphere. Um, but I'll leave the link in the description box. So these Hebrew letters actually, when they circle around and they work as some kind of harmonic, frequencies. They're like harmonics, and so it's very significant, the Hebrew alphabet.
People at that time, including David Wyrick, were trying to prove that these mounds and earthworks had been built by the lost tribes of Israel or other Hebrew groups.
That got some attention, and David was invited to Cincinnati by the reporter. There, it was first denounced by a Hebrew scholar as being too modern Hebrew, denounced by a foremost sculptor, Jones, who sculpted the bust of Lincoln, who said, just adorn, anybody could make that. So David spent his only $19 on the trip and didn't get anything in recompense, came home.
See what the truth gets you? See what the truth gets you? You get slapped in the face, ignored, suppressed. This man spent his only $19. I don't have $2 in my name, but I'm showing you this stuff because it's of the utmost significance. Hoping somebody will see this message and hopefully spread it around. And understand how important this stuff is to know.
He did strike up some friendships because he was encouraged, I think, by Dr. Unzicker to go down to near Jacksontown and look at the site that had once been the Great Stone Mound, where there were a number of mounds, one of which had been opened in 1850 by local farmers. When David got there, there was a wooden coffin. And I might put in here, I keep asking professional archaeologists to tell me where the American mound builders buried in coffins, and they never come up with one. But the coffin was still there, containing a skeleton with copper rings on it. It's still.
Did you hear what he just said there? Copper rings on it. I will. Now Moses, he lifted up the serpent. What kind of serpent was that? What kind of serpent was that? The Nehushtan. Okay. It was a skeleton.
It was hair associated with the skull and cloth, which is rather interesting. David brought the coffin home, and it was lost to history. That was in early July. He went back again in November with another digging party, and they were digging, as David said in his letter, to see if it would hold water. The clay basin that was there. This was clay that.
Once again, that is what I was telling you about. What the significance of water and where it sits, as far as the USA resembling the ark, and where that water sits, and what's the significance of the water. Now Moses, he was drew out of the water. Okay, he was drew out of the water. His name means water, to draw out from the water.
It was brought in. It was apparently clay brought in from the strip mine, what we call the strip mine area, the coal mine areas of Ohio. It was there that he uncovered the stone box that contained the Decalogue stone.
Today, Interstate 70 runs directly through the heart of what was once.
I find it very interesting. Like I told you, now if you look at this picture, now you see when I touch my screen, and you look at these, where the screen is set up, you see everything is a pyramid shape. Now you follow those two triangles up. Now your perception, you've been indoctrinated. You have been indoctrinated. I find it very interesting that this is Interstate 70, where I told you this had happened to me. Now, if you just follow the way, the first followers of the, were called the followers of the way, who Paul persecuted, well, when he was Saul. The first followers were called Nazarenes, Essenes, whatever. They were followers of the way. Follow the way. Straight, the narrow path. Narrow is the gate that few take, and it leads to life. Broad is the gate that leads to destruction, and many take it.
The largest man-made monument in the Ohio Valley, the Great Stone Mound. It stood approximately 55 feet high and had a base measurement of nearly 200 feet. From a distance, the mound resembled a pyramid. It was constructed of large boulders that were hauled away around 1850 to reinforce the dike of what is now Buckeye Lake. When the larger stones were removed, 15 small mounds surrounding a larger mound in the center were revealed. In 1860, Wyrick excavated the larger center mound. It was here that he discovered the coffin and body. Wyrick and his group started to dig in the clay beneath the coffin. 2 feet later, they discovered the stone box that contained the Decalogue stone.
Now that Decalogue stone, as small as this stone is in this guy's hand, this is what I was saying, as small as this stone is in this man's hand. See, the Egyptians, I don't know what they knew exactly about microcosms, macrocosms, metacosms. I don't know exactly what it is. But I believe they knew how to somehow, I guess, like what you would consider shrinking and expanding. I don't know exactly. But that stone, that is a mummy. That is a mummy. I find it very interesting that they carried Joseph's bones over.
They had a good argument as to whether this time they should open it or not, because everybody back there in Newark didn't believe them. So we'll take it back to them and show them. But apparently their curiosity got the best of them, and there was a hole in one end of this stone, this box apparently, and one of the men blew in the box.
Now, what I'm gonna leave the link for Stan Tennant's video about the Hebrew alphabet, and the alphabet is in our hands. Now that little box can fit in your hands.
Box, and it opened. The two halves separated, and that's when they uncovered the famous Decalogue stone. A black piece of slate, actually it's alabaster, but there's alabaster all over the world. Very soft black sandstone with a priestly figure and characters on every single surface.
A few of these letters look like standard Hebrew, but most of them don't. But working from the clue that a few of them look like standard Hebrew, John McCarty, again, that was Episcopalian minister in Newark, was able to decipher the rest of the letters and discover that the text here is basically an abridged version of the Ten Commandments, or Decalogue, written in Hebrew language, but in this funny alphabet. And over the head of this robed and bearded figure is the name Moshe, or Moses in Hebrew. So presumably this is Moses giving the Ten Commandments. Well, alphabet that's used on the Decalogue stone is actually one of its most interesting peculiarities. Well, this chart compares the standard Hebrew alphabet to the alphabet that appears on the Decalogue stone. This column here is basically standard Hebrew letters, and these are the Decalogue letters. About half the letters here are basically standard Hebrew. You can see the bet is basically the same, the dalet is basically the same, the hey is basically the same, and so forth. But perhaps half of the letters are very unusual, in fact, essentially unknown as Hebrew.
I mean, it was, I think, carefully crafted by a stonemason. I think whoever invented this alphabet was pretty sophisticated in their knowledge of Hebrew and gave sort of the table and the alphabet to a stonemason to carve.
So whoever made this actually planned out exactly what he or she wanted to say in advance and carefully planned how it was going to be arranged on this stone and didn't just make cuts or additions at the last minute to make it all fit in.
One of the most incredible aspects of this is that when David Wyrick discovers the keystone, and it's basically accepted, but it doesn't prove what he expected it to have proven, 4 months later, he finds the object, the Decalogue stone, which answers all of the criticisms leveled by the critics of the keystone. It was found beneath a 40-foot tall stone mound. It's got a bizarre, archaic Hebrew alphabet on it, not like the modern Hebrew on the keystone. How? I mean, it stretches the credibility to think that 4 months later, in the same year, somebody looking for could find just exactly what they wanted to find to answer all of the criticisms of their critics. And that just doesn't happen in science. I mean, these people spend their lives working on problems like this. The answer doesn't just pop up 4 months later.
For some reason, someone has chosen to use this very unusual alphabet, which I haven't been able to find anywhere in any source for any of the standard sources of the history of the Hebrew alphabet. So perhaps if that can be discovered, it would be a big clue as to who these people were and why it was, how it happened to get in central Ohio.
Wyrick's discovery of the keystone.
Well, before I go further, let me tell you what Moses' name means in Hebrew. It is it's the Mem Shem He. The Mem Shem He. Okay, the Mem Shem He. Okay, and the Mem is 40. It's equivalent to 40. The Shin is 300, and the Hay is 5. So you add those up. You got 345. You got 712, and you got 73. You got 10, and then you got 55. 55. 55 plus 55, 110. Like I told you, how old was Joseph when he died? 110. How old was Joshua when he died? 110.
Drew some attention, but the finding of the Decalogue stone drew national interest. The reaction to this latest discovery quickly drew the ire of people from the media and scientific community.
And he was, shortly thereafter, denounced in Harper's Weekly magazine by Francis Bacon, as having created frauds.
Let me just see this. 9, you got 9, 1, 9, 1. Let me see. 9, 1, 8, 6, 15, 9, and 1. Nine and 1 is 10. 15, 1 and 6. 15, you got 15. 10, 15, 25, you got 7. Alright.
Very terrible writing. Much as saying nothing good could come out of Ohio. You know, that's out in the middle of nowhere, let alone artifact.
It reminds me of a verse. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Can anything good come out of Nazareth?
Of any value. They must be frauds.
I don't think there's any real evidence now that says that he was the one that did it. But on the other hand, fraud and deception and things like this are not all that uncommon in science. There have been some wonderful studies of that lately, that people that could do something like this, they're not doing it in some cases to fool people. They're doing it because they know that it's the truth. They know that the lost tribes of Israel built these mounds. They're helping the truth along. And that's how some people would see their participation in this. I haven't been able to find the evidence, but I know it's there, and people are stubbornly refusing to believe me, so I've just got to help the truth along a little bit.
Is that the artwork on this woodcut here, which was made by David Wyrick in 1861, is very different than the artwork which appears on the Decalogue stone itself. So even on artistic grounds, it's clear that it was not David Wyrick who carved the Decalogue stone.
When I look at them, two things strike me. One, the stones differ in the type of writing. One's more style.
And before I just remembered this. Now, Ron Wyatt was told, okay, that when they bring about a national Sunday law or something like that, the 2 tables of stone written by the finger of God would be shown, would be let out to the people.
Stylized than the other. One is sort of almost longhand and one is kind of printing, as for my interpretation. Secondly, they're done in different ways. One is scraped. One is pecked out. Quite different. But more importantly, when I look particularly at the box in which the Decalogue stone was found, which contains holes, there are no apparent reason for them, as if you were to stand something up in them, slots as if there were the 2 lids were held together by something, and so on. Who, if he's going to fake something, would go to all of this trouble?
Is it possible that ancient Hebrews made it to the New World and colonized America before Columbus and others?
Is it possible? Sure, it's possible. Is there any evidence that this happened? No. No evidence whatsoever to this date that stands up to the standards of science. The die-offs that occurred after 1492 couldn't have happened because the people would have been exposed to the old world diseases, and it's a historical event that can only happen once. It can't happen again, and the massive graves and the massive deaths that occurred after 1492 tell us that that's when the first sustained and substantial contact with the old world occurred. And it's a biological fact that little carved stone objects can't refute.
Personally, I wouldn't be interested in these things if I didn't think they had a very good chance of being authentic. I'm not a Hebrew scholar myself, but these things have gotten me interested enough that I've learned a little bit about the Hebrew alphabet and something about the history of the Hebrew alphabet.
Frankly, I think that Newark, Ohio, at one time, was sort of a Mecca or Jerusalem kind of place, a place to which one would come for great religious events, a place to which one would bring the remains of the famous people, just as we will take people to Rome to bury them in St. Peter's Basilica. I think people were brought here, and that these are perhaps mementos or talismans or something associated with famous people. And this is particularly in my mind.
What he means by famous is he means royalty. What this man meant was royalty. Now I could show you guys evidence that, that this is what the Egyptians and, the whole significance of that perfume, that nard, that she prepared for Jesus' burial. It was because he was royal. He was part of royalty. That's why a rich man brought those herbs in.
Particularly true of the site where the Decalogue stone was found, for several reasons. One is, it had been buried in a mountain of carried-in stones. The canal builders hauled away between 10 and 15,000 wagon loads of stone.
The story of the Holy Stones continues to baffle individuals to this day. We may never know whether or not these artifacts are genuine, but we do know what became of Wyrick and his efforts to prove his theory.
David Wyrick comes through as a very sad character. He apparently had very little victories in his life. He came to Newark after having failed the newspaper business in the Hocking Valley. He was the county surveyor. But along with that, he continued his hobby in archaeology, digging, as did everybody else in that period of time. But he was forthright. He corresponded with the Smithsonian. And when he discovered these stones, obviously he got national attention, at least as far as New York City, but was denounced. And by that time, his rheumatoid arthritis had become so bad he could not work anymore. So by 1858, 1859, somewhere along in there, he had to quit. He tried to sell the stones, corresponding with the authorities in New York. It was very unsuccessful. And we find that a Newark Advocate, dated April 15, 1864, the notice of the sheriff's sale of his properties, which meant everything he owned, was put on the auction block. That included, apparently, my guess, the Holy Stones. And his heart was in these stones. He tried to sell them in New York and was unsuccessful. And when in 1864, the sheriff's sale notice was given to him, he apparently took more laudanum than he could handle. As at least the newspaper says, he apparently died from an overdose of laudanum. We did find his burying spot in Cedar Hill Cemetery, and there is a much eroded stone there. And maybe someday I'll take up a collection of